Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. Ukraine War Breaking News Update for the evening of the 17th of November 2024, almost the 18th. And the news has finally come, or at least half the news has finally come, that the US have reversed a frustratingly long-held constraint that the Ukrainians are unable to use ATACMS to fire and other missiles to fire deep into Russia. They've lifted that restriction. And lots of people have been super excited because this has been a long time coming. And there are lots of maps flying around about what they can strike. But the reality is they have only, it appears, allowed the Ukrainians to fire deep into the Kursk region, where at the moment the Russians are amassing North Korean troops and other equipment and resources to repel the Ukrainian incursion into Kursk. So here's NPR reporting that in a first, Biden allows Ukraine to strike Russia with US long-range weapons. For the first time, Biden has given Ukraine a green light to use powerful American long-range weapons for strikes inside Russia, a US official told NPR on Sunday. The missiles, known as Army Tactical Missile Systems, or ATACMS, can travel about 190 miles. Their use would enable Ukrainian troops to strike Russia's weapons stockpiles, logistical centers, and airfields, which could help stop Russian forces from advancing on the battlefield and attacking Ukrainian cities. The US official, who wasn't authorized to speak publicly about the decision, said the US is allowing Ukraine to use the weapons to target in and around Kursk, the same region where 10,000 North Korean troops were recently deployed, according to the US and its allies. The authorization marks a significant reversal in US policy. Until recently, the Biden administration resisted allowing Ukraine to fire American long-range missiles into Russian territory for fear it would escalate the war. US confirmed it in the spring that it had sent ATACMS to Ukraine, etc., etc., etc. And it goes on to say that the British and French could follow suit. Of course, they have previously, British and French, said that actually Ukraine can use their long-distance missiles such as Storm Shadow cruise missiles and Scalp-PG cruise missiles to fire deep into Russia. But the US that had indeed stopped the Ukrainians using those European missiles. So it's not a case of following suit. It's a case of Ukraine being allowed to do things as a result of as a result of the US lifting, I guess, unjustified restrictions on Western-provided weapons being used deep into Russia. Now, here we have ATACMS, a Ukrainian source saying early reports suggest that Ukraine's use of ATACMS missiles may come with specific geographic limitations. This nuance might significantly influence the outcomes of their use. Here's a breakdown of what we can expect, given that the information about limitations is correct. So, pinch of salt and all that is we don't necessarily know 100% that the limitations are still on these missiles in terms of only being able to be used around Kursk, but that is what certainly some of the news sources are reporting. So as ATACMS says, as reported before by our team Front Intelligence Insight, Russian forces have moved many key air assets beyond ATACMS range, leaving mainly helicopters and close support jets at the Kursk airfield within striking distance, reducing high-value targets. Russia has a vast network of makeshift ammo depots, command posts, and rail stations and other tactical sites in Kursk Oblast. However, their sheer number far outstrips the limited missiles available to Ukraine. Ukraine faces difficulties with limited salvo sizes and significant ATACMS interception rates, reducing the odds of consistently successful strikes. Our team has detailed these dynamics in a dedicated report before, and they should be factored into expectations. ATACMS variants differ in range and warhead type, some with unitary warheads, others with submunitions. Not all can reach 300 kilometers or target fortified structures, limiting the options further. Quite serious doubts remain over whether Ukraine will be allowed to target Russian oil refineries or energy infrastructure, as the US has opposed similar operations before. While this remains speculative, there is a good chance that critical infrastructure might be excluded. ATACMS will aid Ukraine on the battlefield without a doubt, but expectations should be tempered. Their use is unlikely to dramatically impact Russian or North Korean linked forces in Kursk, delivering incremental tactical gains rather than immediate and decisive outcomes. The goal is not to discourage public sentiment, but to set realistic expectations. To avoid future speculation about why ATACMS didn't shift the war's tide or destroy the Russo-Korean forces in Kursk Oblast. Okay, lots to unpack here, and this is all absolutely on point, which is how many of these missiles do the Ukrainians have? Does it include also JASM, American-provided cruise missiles that may be winding their way to the front line or to Ukraine? But how many ATACMS do they have? What are the added restrictions? Are they only able to fire them into Kursk? Are they only able to fire them at certain military targets? Does it include things like oil refineries? And also, what is the interception rate or the electronic warfare interference rate of these missiles? As we have seen over the course of the introduction of these missiles, initially they were very well utilized and they had a really good success rate. Then it appeared that it was taking more and more ATACMS to fire for some of them to get through. So the interception rate has been pretty good for the Russians, or as I say, the electronic warfare interference rate. So that is a consideration as well. And with limited amount of these missiles and having to use quite a lot of them at any given time to make sure that the target is actually hit, this means that they might be. I mean, this is good. This is better than nothing. This is, we should welcome this, but it's about making sure our expectations are accurate. There will be some targets that will be available to be hit in Kursk, but as mentioned here, the Russians have removed most of their highly valuable airframes, air assets from within the range of ATACMS from Kursk to elsewhere. So it might be close range air support jets, there might be the odd helicopter and whatnot, but it's not going to be the massive change of outcome that one might have hoped for. Especially frustrating that had this decision been made before, then they could have struck at those targets before the Russians moved them. And then there is this discussion about, well, why are the Americans leaking this? What is the point of letting the Russians know again? It's just really frustrating. The reporting of ATACMS being able to be used should have come from the reporting of ATACMS being used. So the strikes on, say, for example, an airbase or an ammo depot that is beyond the normal range of sort of 84 kilometers or whatever it is they can fire at the moment, that should have been news that the restrictions have been lifted. Wait till the missiles hit and say, oh, yeah, by the way, restrictions have been lifted. But instead, announcing this up front is just really counterproductive. George Barros from the Institute for the Study of War says, reminder that there are hundreds of valid, legal, legitimate and operationally consequential military targets in range of Ukrainian ATACMS. The Biden administration's shift to allow ATACMS use in Russia is a good thing, but it must extend beyond Kursk Oblast. And he's produced, or the ISW has produced, an interactive map here. We created a tool to illustrate the extent to which US restrictions on Ukraine's use of ATACMS constrain Ukraine's ability to strike important military infrastructure in Russia. So it is deeply, deeply frustrating that they can't fire elsewhere. There are lots of targets everywhere around the Ukrainian border that Ukraine could hit if they were allowed the full scope of usage there, but instead it's only sort of north of Kursk, so it's only going to be some of these around and there that can be hit, and that's simply, in my opinion, not good enough, but it is a start, right? And I guess one theory could be the incremental theory, and I actually suggested this way back, which is the next thing you'll see is that they can use ATACMS in these areas and then they'll expand and expand and expand. It's exactly what I said, and it could be what's going on, which is in order not to provoke escalatory rhetoric or to provoke the Russians to feel that that's escalation, you just do the lobster boiling in a pot approach, where you just incrementally allow the Ukrainians to do a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. None of those incremental changes itself triggers the large-scale escalation. And as a result, you go from here to here incrementally without the Russians reacting in a way that you might fear. Problem is, it's taking so long. And this goes back to the whole, oh, we won't give F-16s, we won't give F-16s, we won't, or HIMARS or M777s or whatever. We won't do it. Oh, we've done it. We won't do it. Oh, we've done it. Well, why do you go through that whole process of saying no, and then saying yes? All that time wasted. It's insanely frustrating. Of course, it's frustrating, but we still have to say, well, at least there is movement there, right? Donald Trump Jr. has reacted to the announcement that about ATACMS in the manner of a pro-Soviet American communist from the 1970s, military-industrial complex and all that. And these guys say they're nationalists. Jesus, says Edward Hunter Christie. So Donald Trump Jr.'s reaction to this is the military-industrial complex seems to want to make sure they get World War III going before my father has a chance to create peace and save lives. Gotta lock in those trillions. Life be damned, imbeciles. Really, really annoying reaction there. And interestingly, some of the Russian reaction, from what I can gather, has been like we have seen on previous occasions where introductions of new weapons have been made. Or, so for example, Finland and Sweden joining NATO, they were like, no, they can't join NATO. No, they can't join NATO. No, they can't. You watch it if they join NATO. And then they join NATO and they go, oh, well, we were never bothered anyway. It's the old escalation rhetoric, escalation rhetoric. Oh, they've gone and done it, have they? Oh dear, our bluff has been called. Here, War Translated, Dmitry says, Russian military bloggers are actually reacting quite seriously to the permission to use long-range weapons against Russia. Previous authorizations marked significant turning points, especially the HIMARS. So here, there's a Russian mil blogger giving their tuppence worth. Obviously, all the caveats apply, provenance and whatnot. And don't believe people who claim that deep strikes are insignificant. Every escalation involving American Western precision weapons has caused us significant problems. 1. HIMARS since summer 2022. Frontline warehouses, command posts and logistics hubs within its range were decimated. This changed the course of the war and without exaggeration marked the first major turning point. Logistics became stretched thin and using artillery, especially towed systems, became much harder. A lot of ammunition depots were destroyed, triggering the 2022 shell shortage, and this was achieved with only a couple of dozen launchers deployed across the entire front line. Number 2, Storm Shadow and Scalp missiles, 2023. These essentially crippled the Black Sea Fleet. While not everything was sunk, a significant portion of the fleet had to withdraw from Crimea, making it impossible to operate more freely. 3, ATACMS with cluster munitions, 2023. Airfields, even as far as Crimea, were hit hard. The Berdyansk airfield alone is a prime example. These strikes caused severe damage, destroyed a lot of equipment on the ground and inflicted significant human losses. They imposed serious limitations on the operations of Army Aviation and the Aerospace Forces, VKS, in Crimea. The hunt for air defences falls into this same category. Targets deep within the country will face similar impacts. It's not catastrophic, of course, and won't help former Ukraine claim its borders. Interesting terminology there, but the consequences will surprise many, especially if these strikes are allowed to be carried out en masse, as was done in the new territories and Crimea. So there are those Russians who are reacting with caution about this, saying actually do expect this to make quite an impact on the Russian ability to do X, Y, and Z. It is going to depend how many ATACMS, of course, they have to use, the Ukrainians. I just hope that this isn't too little, too late. This is good news, but it could have been better. Another opportunity not quite realised here. Lots of talk about this, and this is on a night where Sumy is being hammered by the Russians, where there have been 10 dead, over 50 wounded, as high-rise apartment blocks have been hit in Sumy by the Russians. This is a good example as to why ATACMS should be able to be used right across the border, hitting air bases where these planes take off from. It's just really, really frustrating that it has taken so long. Then you have things like Marjorie Taylor Greene reacting. I don't know that I even want to look at these. Elon Musk, libs love war. War facilitates bigger government. True, says Elon Musk. It's just so bloody typical. Marjorie Taylor Greene, on his way out the office, Joe Biden is dangerously trying to start World War III by authorizing Ukraine the use of US long-range missiles into Russia. The American people gave a mandate on November the 5th against these exact America last decisions and do not want to fund or fight foreign wars. We want to fix our own problems. Enough of this. It must stop. So the reaction, I mean, this tells you, if Elon Musk is saying that and Donald Trump Jr. is saying similar, then you can guarantee that when the next government come in, when the Trump administration come in, they are not going to allow Ukraine to do any of this stuff. So Ukraine have 2 months to do everything they possibly can, and the Biden administration should just be opening the floodgates to allow Ukraine to do what it can, because the Trump administration will simply not abide with Ukraine getting extra assistance. That's just simply the most obvious conclusion we can make from what everyone around Donald Trump is saying. Everyone. So there should be no doubt in your heads as to where the sympathies for the incoming Trump administration lie, and it's not with Ukraine. Absolutely. It's horrifying. Anyway, it's really good news that certain leaders, so here's the Lithuanian premier saying, the day has come. Ukraine can now target military sites in Russia using long-range missiles. This is a decisive moment in the Ukrainian fight against the Russian aggressor. Peace cannot be achieved through weakness. Peace is a reward of the strong, stay strong Ukraine. Now, that's a kind of reaction I would like to see from some in the US incoming administration, but we're not seeing that. We are not seeing it. Really frustrating, as I've said. So I according to Le Figaro, France and UK have authorized the usage of RPG and Storm Shadow against targets in Russia. As I said, there are no Russian red lines. There are bluffs to cover Russia's aggression. A defending nation has all the rights to strike the aggressor everywhere. Now, this may come from the Kiev Independent reported this and then put out a correction to state that actually there's no change in rhetoric from the UK and France. It's just what existed previously, which should, in my opinion, allow Storm Shadows to be used deep into at least Kursk, to be in line with what the Americans have announced regarding ATACMS and their use in Kursk. So we'll see if there are any emerging details that come out over the next 24 hours or so, but hopefully we will see the Ukrainians be able to strike deeper within Kursk and at least take out some more targets, such as troop accumulations of North Koreans is obviously one such. We heard the other day that just 25 kilometers from the front line are large numbers of North Korean troops accumulated. So that could be a place for the ATACMS to hit. Anyway, that's enough from me. You guys take care, and I'll speak to you soon.